relevant talk shows, and we heard you. 88.5 Super FM presents House Guest, a brand new, fresh fortnightly feature airing on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. House Guest will showcase a cadre of professionals from doctors and entrepreneurs to the next door friendly neighbor. So tune in as we network the community with a platform for open, frank, and informative discussion. Only on Super FM, your community radio station.
88.5 Super FM is now 5 minutes after the hour of 10 a.m. in Super Solution Eastern Caribbean. Good morning, good morning, good morning to our listeners. Welcome inside another edition of House Guest for today, Thursday. It's the 7th of July 2022. With me virtually is Mr. Andre Joyeux, Met Services Director. We found it fitting to invite him here with us on this discussion as we observe the hurricane season. A special good morning to you, Mr. Joyeux. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Just before we begin, for our listeners, please tell us who you are. Present us with your designation, sir.
Okay. Andre Joye, I am the Director of the St. Lucia Met Services.
Given the fact that we are in the hurricane season, and the 2022 Atlantic hurricane season did predict, an above a normal hurricane. I would love for you to break it down for our listening audience because a few weeks back we saw some torrential rains and we were under a tropical storm watch. So kindly speak to this.
Okay, some clarification. We were under severe weather alert. Um,
Severe weather alert
yes.
correction.
Um, we were not under tropical storm watch because the system was expected to pass south of us. It
Just sure.
was yeah, it was expected to develop, but in weather, it's unpredictable. So we actually went for the worst case scenario given our location from the storm. So that's why we went for heavy rains, gusty winds, and thunderstorms. We did not get those events, and it seems like persons were a little disappointed. But as we say in the Met Service, it's better to predict, the worst case scenario and hope for the better. So I'm saying that it was a good thing that it did not happen, but in terms of preparation, persons were warned, and that in the event that it did happen, they would have been prepared. Yes. So
Definitely.
yeah, um, yes, we are in the 2022 hurricane season. It has been, like you said, um, predicted to be above normal. This is the seventh consecutive year that we have above normal hurricane predictions. The average for any 1 year, that's a 40-year average, is 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. All the institutes that predict the hurricane season have gone for that, above those numbers. So, just for example, NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency from the US, they normally give you a range of what to expect. So they go in for between 14 and 21 named storms and 6 to 10 hurricanes, of which 3 to 6 could become major hurricanes.
Thank you very much. As the expert, if I'm correct to say this, speak to weather patterns, hurricane and hurricane seasons, because we know they do vary.
Okay. Recently, we've had um, tropical waves. This is the first step in hurricane formation. So normally you need a disturbance, and there's what we call the Intertropical Convergence zone. This comes off Africa and causes ripples in the atmosphere, which creates clouds and gives you rainfall. So from a tropical wave, you could get a tropical depression, a tropical storm, and then a hurricane. So of late, we've had for the past week, we've had tropical waves affecting us. Now the difference is that they were um, filled with rainfall, so we got a lot of showers, and they were close together. So from Monday into the Saturday, we had lots of rainfall. So once you have the ground being saturated from the first tropical wave, and the others give you more rainfall, then it enhances the chance of flooding and landslides.
Thank you for this.
Yeah.
The term a 65% chance of an above normal season and a 25% chance of a normal season. And we also have a 10% chance of between normal seasons. To somebody else who are not experts as yourself, would be pretty confusing. I would love for you to differentiate.
Okay. The 65% is actually higher, so there's more chance of it happening than not happening. So when the institutes give us that kind of percentage, we would go for an above normal season. So I, I can't recall the second figure you gave. You said 65.
25% chance of near normal.
Yeah. So 25 would give you about 14 name stops. The 65% would give you anything above the 14 name storms. So there's a 25% chance of normal, which is 14 name storms, and the 10% chance of, if I'm correct, is below normal or between the two.
Which
Um,
would definitely be the 10%.
yes. So basically, you would go with the bigger number. So there's more chance of it happening than not happening. So at the Med Service, we are preparing for a very active season.
In your field, what would you describe as being the most challenging times for you?
The hurricane season, we, like I mentioned earlier about the prediction we made, and persons did not get the effects that was predicted. So the next time, I guess I'll have to put a percentage chance of it occurring and it not occurring. So what I give is a forecast. It's a prediction, and there's like I said earlier, it is better to give it in the worst case scenario than have persons, hear that okay, there's a 50-50 chance that it could occur, and then they would not really listen to our weather report. It's better to go with the higher number or the higher impact, and then so persons would be better prepared. So this is very challenging. Persons don't understand the unpredictability of weather.
If I were to maybe just add scenario as well, because sometimes I get attacked if I have to say with going to the daily forecasters saying that today we were expecting some heavy showers and it doesn't even turn out so. It's extremely dry and persons hold you accountable to say, but I thought you said it was going to rain today and then we saw nothing. Again,
Okay.
I'm relying on the med services.
All right. The challenge is that we live on a small island. So basically, our weather pattern would be that of the sea because we have more ocean than land. So when you do a prediction, it's possible that there is rainfall, but it does not happen over the small island. Um, in contrast to that, there could always also be one tiny cloud that passes over St. Lucia and gives us flooding. And then the rest of the region, like Barbados, Martinique, and St. Vincent, which are the islands around us, don't get any rainfall. So the science is actually improving, and we are trying to um, get better forecasts. So far, the Americans are the ones who give out the hurricane predictions of where the system will pass and the intensity. I think they've been doing a good job in terms of the track where the hurricane passes. But in terms of the intensity, there needs a little more work to be done. So, based on that, again, I'll go back to it's better to give the worst case scenario. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Joyeux. Strain a little, speak to other climate factors, for example, La Nina and El Nino.
Okay. One of the factors that scientists have realized this is kind of a new phenomena that was discovered a couple of years ago, and they've realized that the warmth or coolness of the Pacific Ocean, which is the other ocean across from us, um, by monitoring the heat of the seas, it actually affects the resulting temperatures affect the weather in right around the world. So when we have El Nino, we know that we'll have less hurricanes because of the wind share. The winds will be lighter. Sorry, stronger. So it prevents the hurricane from forming. That doesn't mean that we will not have hurricanes during the El Nino. La Nina, on the other hand, is going for more hurricanes, and even though you have more hurricanes, it doesn't mean that you'll be affected. So we have to understand that there are a number of factors which drives the weather. So El Nino and La Nina means El Nino is that the seas are cooler, and in El Nino it's warmer in the Pacific. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I think persons will over the view with the El Nino scorching heat, and we've seen in the States the patterns of extra heat that a lot of persons have died through such.
Okay. Well, you see, that's the other difference is that, like I mentioned, we are small dots. In the US, they are bigger country, and it's a lot easier to predict the weather to some extent. So heat waves would be something that um, would be experienced on a bigger on a continental scale. It's because there are more factors than just uh, hurricanes and tropical waves. They would have the storms, the ice. So their range of temperatures would be a lot different. It would go from zero or minus something to 100 and plus. So that difference in temperature makes it, um, how would I put it? It causes more damage to the environment than our tropical systems.
Thank you for that. Kindly advise on the excessive rainfall outlook, giving notice to flash flooding. And I think this is where it really speaks to us in terms of our flat or low coastline areas.
Yes, there are a number of features. One, because we are mountainous. So if you have a lot of rain in the interior, then you would have that water rushing down to the sea. If you have high tides on that day, instead of the water escaping to the sea, it would pile up in the lower areas where most of our villages are. So because of tropical waves that give us rainfall, we have upper level troughs, we have storm systems, and hurricanes. All of these, once they give a lot of rainfall, because of our topography, that is the mountain range and the flat areas, that contrast would actually assist with flooding. So over the past week, we've had three tropical waves in 1 week, and once the soils are wet and soaked, then the rest of the rain that comes after um, flows on the surface and causes flooding and landslides. So this is something that we live with, and we're supposed to take measures. I know persons like to build in flat areas. It's easier, but you must also keep in mind that our weather pattern every 6 months out of the year, we're expecting rain, and you should think of the weather when you're building.
What differentiates a tropical with an upper level trough? They sound pretty similar.
Oh no, they're very different. Actually, they come from opposite directions. The tropical waves come off Africa and move across the island chain every 3 to 4 days, and the upper level trough actually comes from the west. So most likely they come off the U.S. coast and comes across the islands. So the difference is that one has low level. It starts to occur at the low levels, and the upper level trough, as its name signifies, it starts at the upper levels, and then it brings down um, the what do you call it, the instability down to the lower levels. So the two systems are actually opposite in their makeup.
Am I correct to say during the hurricane season, this is where we witness various weather patterns?
Well, as the Christmas Eve trough proved, that we could have systems outside of the hurricane season, because our season is from June to November, and December was not a time when we actually anticipated such intense rainfall. Um, we've also had hurricanes forming during the beginning of the year, like January. I think there have been instances where every month over the past years have had a system forming. So it's not just the hurricane season. We have systems outside of that, and that makes it very difficult to predict.
Thank you. What are the climate change indicators associated with widespread changes in weather patterns that can be a bit confusing?
Okay, well, the first one right off the bat is that the atmosphere is warming, and with that warmth, it would create more intense hurricanes. It would give us like high rainfall events, but that's where there's a contradiction. It's like we will be getting high rainfall events, but then we'll also be getting drought. So it's like we are getting the two extremes, and that is causing problems for economic activity, for persons, in low-lying areas doing agriculture. Just to name one area that will be affected by drought and also heavy rainfall. So climate change is a real event. The seas are also warming, and with the warming of the seas and the expected melting of the ice caps, we'll be getting sea level rise, and that would cause low-lying areas to be flooded by seawater. So in the future, we have to start planning. Well, we have to plan now for the future in the event that the rise in the sea level is significant, where it would affect our low-lying villages and towns, and even the city.
As the Med Services Director, I would love for you to present some tips in terms of before and after when it comes to necessary preparations.
Okay. Well, now I will be giving out some information from Nemo. Yeah, because basically we monitor and we report the weather, but just from experience, we've learned that you have to trim overhanging branches in your area, clear drains, don't litter, because that's one of the things we've noticed, in that the clogged drains, because of the debris, is actually affecting us, where when the heavy rains come, the culverts and bridges are blocked up, and then you'd have overflowing of the banks. So we need to learn that we have to protect ourselves. And by taking these simple measures, you have to make sure all your valuables are in watertight containers. Always have a supply of food, non food that wouldn't perish quickly. Because this is one area, yeah, as I'm talking about it, I need to expand. Is that I am not working for massive stores. So when I tell you to stock up on foods, it's something where you could use it afterwards. So it's not a matter of having to spend extra money. Um, we should look at it like this: every carnival season, we put money aside for us to buy our costumes. Every hurricane season, we're supposed to plan for the event and make sure we have our supplies ready. So in the event that something happens, we can sustain ourselves, and don't depend too heavily on handouts. Yeah.
Which
So
is true.
after, sorry, just to
Which is
continue.
true. Which is true. We have to be prepared.
Yeah. And just to add, after a system, um, the Nemo would be the one issuing the all clear. We would give Nemo the information that the system has passed and that the first responders can go out to assess the damage. But we are asking persons that they don't go out when the winds or the rain stop, because you could still have trees falling, you could have down power lines. So let the experts take charge of these assessments, and then when they feel it's safe for the rest of the population, then they would give the all clear. So just to inform that the all clear has to be given by the Prime Minister and Nemo, through Nemo. Sorry.
Thank you for that. A lot of the times, Mr. Joyeux, we realize, and I think it's already the culture where, as much as those advisories do come in to ask us to be prepared, there's a storm, there's a hurricane, there's a tropical storm, but we have the tendency to be lenient because we know, okay, nothing ever happens to us. We always get spared. So sometimes we disregard those advisories.
Okay, well, it's culture that has to change, because I would like to point out that we've had certain systems that has affected us greatly. One of them, which I experienced when I was a young person, was Hurricane Allen in 1980, and I think because of that, I end up being in the field of meteorology. So we had significant damage in the south. We had um, Hurri- Hurricane Thomas, which affected Sucre, and a number of persons lost their lives. We've had the upper level trough, which also caused significant damage. So it's not like we haven't been affected. It's just that our Caribbean people have a short memory. Recently, we had Dominica having two Category 5 hurricanes in 1 year, and then we had Dorian recently in the Bahamas, and these are events that is occurring all around us, and it can affect us, at some time or the other. So being prepared just says that if something bad happens, we can handle it. So we have to be more resilient as a people, and we should take heed of the warnings that are being given. Social media is making it a little difficult, in that even though it helps in a certain way, we have a lot of malicious persons who would take a report and something that passed a couple of years ago or in another part of the world, and then they would put that out. So persons would panic, and but all you have to do is call the med services in the event that you have any queries. Find out if this is real information, because we are the official entity that gives out the weather report. So we can verify whether it's true or not. Um, Persons could even take the weather report and tweak it and then resend it. So little things like that. For one reason or the other, we're not sure why persons do this, but just to cause problems, and we need to stop that practice. And I should add also that persons actually listen to social media than read the weather report or listen to the weather report on the news. So it's always go to the official source.
Definitely.
Yeah.
With that being said, permit me to ask, in terms of the Met Services advisories, the bulletins, before and during a storm, do you think enough is being done in terms of the dialogue, the awareness with the Met Services and NEMO, the police, and other entities?
Okay. We always in contact with the other entities, Nemo police, but I think a little more can be done on our behalf. There's one um, issue that some persons have brought up to my attention, is that when you give a weather forecast for a tropical wave, you would say scattered showers, gusty winds, and isolated thunderstorms. Um, so it's expected that all waves are like that. But the truth is that some would have more convection than others. So in the event that the tropical wave is more um, stronger than normal, we should have a way of indicating that to persons. So it's either I would have to appear on television to warn persons, or we have to change the wording of our forecast. Um, since we this is our field, we understand what we say, but we've noticed that persons tend to have a little problem in dissecting what exactly the Met is trying to say. So this is an area where we definitely need to work on.
I can rightfully say 100% I agree with you because I have some trouble sometimes,
Okay.
understanding it. And it takes me to asking, what is in terms of the Saharan dust haze? I know sometimes we would be faced with the dust particles and it would make it very uncomfortable for breathing the heat and all of those things. When does that really occur for persons who are listening? And I have you here, so I have to make use of asking all the necessary questions.
Sure. Okay. What has happened is in the past we did not measure Saharan dust because the equipment we had did not permit that. So right now we have satellite images that could actually give you the Saharan dust coming off of Africa, and it would show you the intensity, how far it has gone. So it is something. Some persons are actually saying that it is more intense because they have not seen it like that before. So this is another area where climate change is actually playing a role, and we're getting more dust in the atmosphere than usual. We've also noticed that this is not something where the high pressure system causes the Saharan dust. It is right now, it is year round. So even in the dry season, we had Saharan dust, and we enter in the wet season and we still have the Saharan dust. The I must add that this both helps and um, inhibits tropical storm formation. So when you have thick Saharan dust, the tropical system cannot form. But if you have just the right amount, like a little bit, then it helps with the formation of tropical systems. So this is an area that will require some study. I think the studies are ongoing, and Saharan dust and Sargassum, which is in the sea. I think there's a correlation between the two, where one feeds off the other. So when that dust falls in the ocean, it gives nutrients to the Sargassum. So these are areas where we can blame climate change, and these are phenomena that are here to stay because we cannot prevent them.
Wow, here I am learning something today that the Saharan dust and the Sargassum feed off each other. And I'm sure the listeners can agree with me as well. We're never too old to learn something. Adding to that, I find it a bit confusing as well when it comes to the interconvergence zone, and we have the belt and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. It's just a long phrase. It's where the winds from the northern half of the Earth meets with the winds from the southern half. So because of the way the Earth spins, it causes the northern hemisphere to have northeasterly winds and those in the south to have southeasterly winds. So when they meet, there's a line of clouds that circles the Earth. And what you have during the hurricane season is that the inter ITCZ is further north, so we would actually be getting rainfall from that feature. In the dry season, it goes down south, and I must add that Guyana suffers from having two rainfall seasons because of that movement. So when the intertropical convergence zone moves north, it passes over Guyana, and when it goes back down south, it passes over Guyana. So it gives them rainfall twice. With us, it's just in the hurricane season, in the wet season, we get rainfall from that system for that particular period between June to November.
When does a tropical cyclone form?
Okay, because of the intertropical convergence zone and those two winds meeting together, it could actually start turning in a cyclonic anti-clockwise direction. Was it? Yeah, and once the ingredients, okay, you need warm seas, you need that turning at the low levels, you need the winds at the mid levels and upper levels to be light, and at the upper level you need winds to be moving away. So the the hurricane would actually form by the winds coming together at the bottom, rising and then spreading out. So you get like a funnel, and that would intensify. And once the winds are above 64 miles per hour, it becomes a hurricane. So the different categories from tropical wave, depression, storm, it has to do with the winds.
Thank you. Can you? It's a concern. Does the hurricane season or an active above normal hurricane season would have any effect on volcanoes?
There is no evidence to confirm this. Um, Volcanoes are affected by the shifting of the magma below the Earth's surface. So weather is something that affects above and the seas. But as far as I know, volcanoes are not affected by um, the weather patterns. Um, Recently in St. Vincent, because of the flooding that happened after the volcano, that helped with making the flows from the volcano reach a further distance. So it affected more persons. So in conjunction with the weather, it could cause problems, but then the weather doesn't affect hurricanes.
Thank you very much. 88.5 at Surf FM, 25 minutes moving up to the hour of 11 a.m. in Surface and Lucia and the Eastern Caribbean. If you're just joining us, good morning to you. Welcome inside this panel with me virtually, Mr. Andre Joyeux, Met Services Director. And this is all in the observance of hurricane awareness, or how prepared are you this hurricane season? Understanding how the system is being monitored. Is it Danielle? Provide us with more information.
Or how it's been monitored. Okay, first of all, we have the National Hurricane Center in the US. They would issue charts which would give us the areas where the tropical waves would start off, and not just the charts, but then you have the satellites that monitor the atmosphere, and you could actually see the cloud formation. So as those systems come closer, Then the radars would pick it up because we have radars in Martinique and Barbados, and then you would see how intense the system is by the radar. So the radars are for closer, but further out, we would use satellite images to monitor the systems. We would have an idea of how fast the system is moving, so we could give accurate prediction on when the system could reach us. I should also point out that when a wave is coming closer to us, because of the land mass, it's like it slows down a little before coming to us. So it actually um, slows down the weather pattern.
I'm very happy you made mention of wave patterns because there was a prediction that we would have had a tsunami, and we've not seen anything to date. I'm not asking for it, but then just if there's something you can say to us, reference.
Okay. Well, just by chance, the Met Services is the focal point for tsunamis. What we do, we cannot monitor really. We depend on the Americans in the Pacific to give out tsunami warnings. And since we work 24 hours a day, we would pass on that message to Nemo, the police, and fire. Right. The reason why persons could say that there's an expected tsunami is because it's been a long time it has not occurred. So the longer time it takes, then you'd expect that it could happen anytime soon. So the Pacific normally have tsunamis on a regular basis, but the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea have not had a tsunami in a while. So it's just a matter of saying it's overdue, right? Sorry to use that, but
That's scary.
um, yeah, it's scary. But the thing is, sometimes we have to be scared for us to prepare. So um, always expect that you could have some kind of storm surge or tsunami where the waves would come in and affect where you live. So put your plans in place. I think for tsunamis, you just have to run to higher ground. So you need to know where to go and what road you will be passing. So you won't choose a road where you'd have to go around the bend and stuff. You go straight up the hill. Yeah.
Mr. Jmayo, I hope I haven't instilled fear in persons now to think that sometimes there's a lot of misinterpretation to believe,
Mhm.
okay, we will be having a tsunami, so we have to prepare and stuff like that. So that's not
Yeah.
what we're actually saying for sure.
The thing is, we're not saying that it will happen now, but we're saying prepare for it now, so that in the event it happens later, that we could be better able to handle it. Because a tsunami doesn't give you warning like a hurricane. You see it coming, and then you know um, that you could prepare a couple of days in advance. A tsunami would happen now, and depending on the depth, how deep it is in the Earth's crust, and how close it is to us, we might have minutes to react to the warnings. So this is something where Nemo has been preaching that I think they have done drills in some of the districts that persons have to know. They should have a tsunami plan. They should have a hurricane plan, know what to do, because when systems hit and you don't know what to do, you panic, and that causes a strain on the resources. So persons would have to go out, and try to help you, whereas they should be helping, themselves. So being prepared makes all the difference.
Definitely. Tips for all those of you as well, be prepared. Also, just before we end our discussion, it has been so interesting. I have gained a wealth of information for sure. It's vicious to say all of those weather conditions and hurricanes and stuff, they tend to occur when persons are asleep, like the wee hours or even during the nighttime period where you're left to doing very little.
Um, it would seem like that, but there are instances where you would have a system during the day. Now, because when say a hurricane hits, Elsa, okay, case in point, Hurricane Elsa that affected us last year happened from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that was in the broad daylight. But because of the darkness that is created when a system passes over you, you would think that it's night. So you have that perception that it only happens at night. No, it doesn't. It happens any time of the day or night. But of late, like the most of the weather, the rainfall happen during the night. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it could be a blessing in disguise in that
A
at night.
blessing.
Yeah, because if it's during the day, persons tend to go out and investigate, and they could put themselves in the way of harm. When it happening at night, you're sleeping. It occurs, and you're not that inquisitive to go out late night to see what's happening. So it passes by during the night, and then in the morning you'd see, the extent of damage if there's any. So maybe it's a good thing.
Well, to some people it works. Other persons still want to be late night detective as well. And I think it is our mentality. Like I had a discussion yesterday where things are happening and we tend to move towards it instead of away from it to safeguard ourselves.
Yes, sad, but
Very.
true. Yeah.
Um, any other talking points you may have, this is your time to do so.
Well, I would like to reiterate that this is the hurricane season. Persons should have their hurricane plans. Make sure you know what to do in the event that a weather system affects us, for landslides, for flooding, you know, high winds. You should always have a plan, secure your documents in the event of something bad happening, and listen to the official weather report. If you are in doubt about any system that you see on social media, you could just call the Met Services, the forecasting office in Beaufort, 4546-550, and ask a question. We are at work from, well, 24 hours, we man our office. So we are there working hard towards protecting the St. Lucian people.
Thank you for that. Please air your final sentiments.
Okay, those were actually my final sentiments in that. Yeah, you have to be prepared. Um, this happens every year, right? So even though one year it is not so severe, what has happened in the past is that you could have active seasons, but nothing happens in St. Lucia, right? It happens close to us, but we should not be complacent. Is that we have to prepare because we never know what year we're going to be affected. So being prepared is the key, right? And of course, you have to learn how to build back better. Um, think of the weather when you're building. So you could weather the storm. You could do better. You could build on pillars to in case of flooding. If you're in an area where that is prone to flooding, you build a little higher, and you could be able to be above the floodwaters. So there are a lots of little things that persons can do. You could also contact Nemo, and they could assist you with whatever plans you have in case of you want to do a hurricane plan or a tsunami plan. And yeah, purchasing food is you when you buy the food, it doesn't spoil. So it's not a case of us wanting you to spend your money where you don't benefit. You can always eat the food afterwards, right? And again, social media, we need everyone to be on the same page. Um, yes, I'm aware that some of the weather reports would actually be a little more, how do I put it? It would give you a little more clarity, but the problem is you are not an expert in the field of weather. We are. And you would misinterpret all the information that's out there. So if you're not clear on something, please call the Met Service and we can assist in clarifying whatever issue that you're having.
Which is true. And maybe just before we leave, for me to just add on a little in terms of the various advisories. For example, if you have the 6 a.m., you have the 11, and you have the 12, some of the times it can be a bit misunderstood by persons.
Okay. Well, whenever we have a hurricane or storm, we send out advisories at 8 in the morning, 11. So every 3 hours, we send out advisories. But the public weather forecast goes out at 6 in the morning, 12 noon, and 6 p.m. So by sending out bulletins outside of our regular weather forecast, it assists persons with knowing what is happening around them. But I
Which
know persons don't read, so we might have to think of putting a studio in the Met office where we could give you an explanation over the television. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, this is where we say thank you so much, Mr. Joyo, for joining us here virtually to provide a wealth of information as we observe the hurricane season. Thank you so, so much for making yourself available to our listening audience. I say immense thank you to you for joining us here today for yet another edition of our house guest. Thursday, the 7th of July, 2022. It has been a pleasure to keep you informed. This is where again we say goodbye. Have a productive day. Mr. Joyeux, again, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
The Foster Jack Credit Cooperative Society Limited wishes to inform its members and the general public that its Soufrière branch will officially commence operations at its new location on Bridge Street, former FCIB building, from Monday, 4th July, starting at 8 a.m. To facilitate